In the 19th century, a whole bunch of stuff was happening in France, like a lot. Coming right off the French Revolution, they'd entered a new era, the Napoleonic one. The final coup was spearheaded by that guy from that movie, Napoleon, and he did a lot of stuff, but that's not the point. The point is, he was the guy for that moment in France. It's almost like he's the main character of France, and I think that's pretty cool. Someone should make a movie about that. In 1840, Thomas Carlyle published a series of lectures on heroism, which he stated the history of the world is but the biography of great men, deeming Napoleon the heroic king, the absolute charismatic leader, and the great man the French people needed. This is a figure that has always been prevalent in storytelling, fiction or nonfiction. This is how we build heroes and villains, through centralizing and glorifying key individuals instead of collective movements. Radical individualism is something that I feel is tied to the whole American experiment. Our culture is sort of built around this belief that we should be standing out from the crowd. If we trace this back to the post-World War I American exceptionalism, we see figures like Superman. He stands for truth and justice, a purely good central figure who will always save the day. However, as America as a concept becomes more critiqued, our interactions with these American heroes change too. A hero can be complicated now. They're supposed to have flaws. That's because we too, believe it or not, have flaws. As our identity as Americans grows larger negative connotations and implications, these on-screen representations of American idealism grow further complicated. Not in a way that means to say our identity and actions are wrong, but one that coddles these flaws, enables them. Baudry and Metz make this move to position the cinema as a modern-day Plato's cave. This idea that the movies made reflect the values and beliefs of the society they were made in. Plato's Cave, for the uninitiated and cool people who know that philosophy is a waste of time, depicts prisoners who have been chained to the wall in a dark cave their entire lives. They can only see the shadows cast on the wall in front of them, shadows that they believe to be reality. In the context of cinema, the screen becomes the cave wall, and the images projected are the shadows. Baudry and Metz suggest that audiences, like the cave's prisoners, are often unaware that what they're seeing is a constructed version of reality, filtered, shaped, and manipulated. Cinema then becomes a space where dominant ideologies are reinforced subtly through storytelling, aesthetics, and form. Films aren't simply narratives, they're massive fields of cultural signifiers and confirmation biases for our own insecurities and fears. Take Rear Window, which I think is a perfect movie. But this is a film that is literally about violating our neighbor's privacy. Peeping on women, gossiping about a young marriage, and stopping a murder through constant surveillance. Yeah, it's weird that Jeffries is obsessed with constantly visually stalking these people, but he saved that woman's life. The world is a good and better place because of this surveillance, not in a way that is central to the story, but it is the entire vehicle of the storyline. This movie came out in 1954. I wonder if there was some sort of mass surveillance campaign taking place in America where we violated freedoms and ruined people's lives all for the sake of the American identity. I guess not. The three movies I'll be discussing are Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street, and David Fincher's Fight Club. I know, right? In this project, I'm taking a look at three movies that, if I'm being honest, have been talked to death already. It's the very fact that these movies are so prevalent in the filmic zeitgeist that reflects their influences as devices of storytelling. But let's get back to Napoleon. Recently, Ridley Scott directed a biopic of Patient Zero himself. It didn't do too hot with the reviews, but I thought it was pretty okay. I was really interested in Joaquin Phoenix's performance. He kept his American accent.
Back, and your manners are bound sooner or later to be French. I will offer no more letters of peace, and I will take the lack of a swift reply as an act of disrespect. You think you're so great because you have boats!
It is a shame such a great man should have no manners.
Everyone else is speaking with a French or British accent, but he's sort of our POV character. It almost grounds our fear of the other. The main character at least speaks like us, and he's an outsider. And to some extent, that's Napoleon being Americanized. My point being that even in this culture of radical individualism, we still have this contradictory need for conformity. Our culture still necessitates an insider-outsider dynamic. And that's because, for a lot of people, interacting with foreignness is weird. Even France is just too fundamentally different from being American. Honestly, I don't even want to think about it anymore. Get me back to these other cool movies. I think that The Dark Knight works as a very interesting parallel to these other two projects. In this film, the necessity of a hero like Batman is being interrogated. Is the surveillance and control he asserts really worth it? To Nolan, absolutely. The Wolf of Wall Street and Fight Club, on the other hand, seek to critique these powerful figures. But I'm going to demonstrate that Fincher and Scorsese's filmic techniques used to build the persona of problematic characters mirror Nolan's approach, and in that construction, we are still separating them as above the ordinary person. These films aren't Napoleon, which kind of just came out. The Dark Knight and Fight Club are logged in the top 20 of most watched movies ever on IMDb. They're tied to the entire concept of the film bro. Seriously, right now, look up film bro movies and pick a random list. All 3 of these movies will be there. The implication is that these are worthwhile movies, like something a new boyfriend would be stunned like his girlfriend hasn't seen yet. It's the stamp of approval from people who like movies. So the Joker has rigged 2 bombs to explode. One of them is on a ferry carrying civilians and the other is carrying prisoners. Each of them have been given the detonator and have been told that they will blow up the opposite boat. But here's how twisted the Joker is. He's actually going to blow up both of them. I mean, as this one really funny ADR line from the movie would say,
Till now.
Things are worse than ever.
this ferry sequence alternates between 3 visual spaces: the tight, claustrophobic interior of the ferries, where the passengers huddle together in dim lighting, the Joker's vantage point, a detached surveillance-like perspective in which he looms over the city, the Batman control room, where Lucius Fox monitors Gotham citizens through a high-tech sonar system. Yes, Batman has created a high-tech sonar system that connects to every phone in Gotham that somehow allows him to, map out the inside of every single room because of phones. I don't know. This is such a uniquely post-9/11, post-Patriot Act scenario. It is quite literally a terrorist attack on massive modes of transportation that is thwarted by what some may perceive as an overstepping of personal privacy and liberty. Nolan uses these high-angle shots in the passengers, visually rendering them powerless. The dim, artificial lighting emphasizes their entrapment. Their close-ups, often framed in shallow focus, isolate them in their moral dilemmas, but their agency is undercut by the editing, cutting away before their decisions can fully register. Batman and Lucius Fox occupy a space of total technological control. The cutting here is methodical and slow, contrasting with the frenetic cross-cutting on the ferries. This visual contrast implicitly validates the necessity of surveillance. Where the people of Gotham act in uncertainty, Batman operates in calculated control. The film cuts away before characters make choices, reducing their moral dilemmas to brief gestures and glances. The ferry passengers are given just enough screen time to register their hesitation, but not enough to develop a complex feeling. In doing so, The Dark Knight reinforces the idea that ordinary people cannot drive action. Only figures like Batman and the Joker can. Even the final decision is framed passively. Rather than a moment of defiance, the prisoner simply tosses the detonator away in an act of negation. This sequence reminds us that choosing inaction is the best thing the average person can do. The boats are saved because Batman stops the Joker, not because anyone makes any other kind of decision. In fact, it was that refusal of choice that saved both boats. Batman and his weird sonar room are something the city needs. He's the great man of Gotham. The ferry sequence presents Gotham citizens as pawns in a grand ideological chess match, a game that they are not equipped to win. The Joker's chaos is seductive but self-defeating. Batman's surveillance is intrusive but necessary. By framing its moral dilemmas as grand experiments rather than substantive critiques, it positions the viewer as a passive observer, mirroring the ferry passengers themselves. Stephen Prince reads The Dark Knight as something more indulgent, sort of a bread and circuses approach to coping with the post-9/11 world. He argues that audiences were drawn to these 2008 blockbusters like The Avengers and The Dark Knight over films with higher political implications because of this sort of cathartic distraction. It's Ledger's infamous performance, the special effects, just the fact that it's a Batman movie alone that draws people in. Nolan has said many times that he does not make his films with political intent. And to Prince, it's that implication of a lack of political involvement that draws an audience. The fundamental construction is one centered on being apolitical and passive. The character of Batman alone is a struggle with American culture. Bruce Wayne is a billionaire CEO who inherited his fortune and success from his family. That's not exactly the self-made figure we're meant to idolize. He has this persona of an arrogant socialite who dates supermodels and falls asleep at meetings, but wait. He's actually sleepy because he's Batman, not because he's partying. He only goes yachting so he can get close enough to Hong Kong to do Batman stuff. He publicly lives lavishly because we would never think that Batman would own a sports car. The only way Batman can afford the Batmobile and the gadgets is this Bruce Wayne identity. It's yeah, CEOs are gross, but under communism we would never have cell phone sonar technology. Let's be honest, he's the perfect CEO. I wish he was my boss. Justine Toh interprets Wayne as this sort of Reaganite throwback character. He's this sort of faux philanthropist who justifies and redeems the military contracts his company takes on by weaponizing them for his own objectively good means. Avril Horner calls this like a liquid modernity, which is coping with globalization and like America's influence and involvement in these larger political spheres. How can we as citizens live with the knowledge of like how many military bases the United States has all over the world? Like, should we be able to make ourselves the world police? Well, Batman skirts his jurisdiction of Gotham to go to Hong Kong and like save the day over there. It goes back to these like cowboy westerns. He's the good outlaw. We are like necessary goods by having these bases and this sort of global control over there. By proxy, the US is the good outlaw as well. Our laws and power are transnational and fluid, and now so is Batman. The one thing that would truly perfect Batman is if he was a self-made billionaire who became successful in a fully ethical way, which is definitely a real thing that exists. A CEO who also punches the Joker is kind of the modern American dream personified. The conceit that Nolan is making is that the other CEOs who live like Bruce Wayne are not also Batman. But what are we going to do? Stop having CEOs? I mean, we still got to have those guys. They're cool. At least cooler than like whatever genre of billionaires we have right now. At least Jordan Belfort made his money scamming people himself like a real red-blooded American. So when a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street seeks to critique this like excess and corruption, it's kind of possible to get wrapped up in its own aesthetics. This is because the film depicts Belfort as more like a charismatic genius who just like knows the right thing to say all the time. And that kind of gives it more of a catch me if you can feel than like Enron.
Excellent choice, Kevin. How much you want to go for this time?
Let's do $5,000.
We try 8,000, Kevin.
All right, let's do 10.
10.
You want to do that?
Excellent choice. Kevin, let me lock in that trade right now and get back to you in a few minutes with an exact confirmation, Kevin.
Right.
And welcome to Stratton Oakmont.
Thanks, man. I'm going to have a beer. That's fun.
Take it easy, Kev.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Thanks a lot.
Like, that looked awesome. That was cool. I think it's an interesting parallel against Bruce Wayne. See, Belfort actually parties. He's not on that boat to do Batman stuff. He's there to do cocaine. Batman gets paralyzed because Tom Hardy breaks his back. Belfort's paralyzed because he took too many Quaaludes. Scorsese's signature Kinect style, rapid editing, freeze frames, direct address to the camera creates an affective experience that mirrors the high of excess rather than alienating the viewer from it. By speaking directly to the audience, Belfort doesn't invite scrutiny, he recruits us into his world. The use of first-person narration makes it easier for us to understand his perspective. The film rarely slows down to allow moral contemplation. The quick-cut montage of excess, cocaine, yachts operate as a highlight reel rather than a cautionary tale. And this is intentional. Obviously, Scorsese's critiquing Jordan Belfort here. There's no world where he's saying, this guy's awesome and you should live like him. But I do think giving him this kind of attention is interesting. Here are some interviews and appearances that the real Jordan Belfort has been doing very recently.
Hold on tight is your message.
I'm going to buy a Tesla today, by the way.
Okay.
I'm buying a Tesla today.
Nice. Good job.
Crazy, right? That one's especially crazy. The man who is literally only famous for scamming and lying to people is being turned to for real financial advice on real television for us to consume. What I'm trying to argue is that our cultural obsession with the lone exceptional figure, be it Napoleon, Batman, Jordan Belfort, is less about storytelling and more about this sort of deeply ingrained ideology. These films don't just depict great men, they manufacture them. They repackage the myth of the singular hero for a modern audience, often dressing it up in moral ambiguity or like some kind of critique, but still elevating them above the crowd. And like the shadows on Plato's cave wall, we continue to look up at these figures, believing they're the ones who define history, when really they just reflect the values we're too afraid to fully interrogate. Let's take a look at this scene. Belfort has been hired at an investment center that specializes in penny stocks. Upon discovering that he gets a 50% cut, there's sort of a light that sparks in his eyes, a new opportunity to cash out. When he gets a potential investor on the line, he's so good at selling this company that everyone in the background slowly starts paying more and more attention to the sales pitch he's making. The first thing said once Jordan makes this sale is spoken by a coworker, another sales rep. How'd you do that? See, this separates Jordan from the everyman. He's the guy that takes action. He's the guy that actually does something, for better or for worse. And he takes that inspiration and just runs with it. These people around him see him as different. He has drive. Sudarshan Ramani notes how he takes these like social inferiors, ex-drug dealers, single mothers, Jonah Hill, and he turns them into like stock sharks. He's ironically like functioning as a job creator. It's positioning him as in some sense like more economically productive than, I don't know, Wells Fargo. These trappings of wealth don't just corrupt the elite, but they ensnare the middle class into being complicit in the glorification of these alpha male wolves. So what does that make his coworkers? Just bodies that exist to experience amazement caused by him? Are they just people that exist to fill the background in soft focus while he gives a totally badass speech? Well, speaking of badass speeches, the book Fight Club was written in the first person, and Palachunik didn't just forget to give his main character a first name. He's nameless because he could be any of us. He just kind of floats through life, drowning in IKEA catalogs and trying to find meaning through self-help groups for afflictions he doesn't have. Then he meets Tyler Durden, and everything kind of changes. He's seduced by this idea of freedom. The narrator and Tyler are constantly separated by light, with Tyler just bathed in it, and the narrator in a complete shadow, showing his lack of agency and, I guess, importance in the frame. When the narrator embraces Tyler's philosophy more and more, he starts to unravel. The chaos Tyler preaches is revealed to be unsustainable, and the narrator's attempt to wield his power leads to a breakdown. In a way, it's the narrator's rejection of his natural role in the world that brought around his own destruction. He, as the average person, never really had a shot in the first place. These films are punishing the ordinary people who try to rise above their station. The Dark Knight shows these Batman copycats who try to emulate what he does but are just fundamentally unequipped to save people. They have to use guns, they wear hockey pads instead of whatever material Batman wears. Batman arrests them because he doesn't want other people to be Batman. He has to be the one to protect them. The Joker kills one of them on live broadcast to show people what happens when you try to be Batman. Change can only happen through these singular figures, and furthermore, outside of any structures of control. The police get infiltrated. The only reason the Joker's arrested is because he wants to be arrested. The Joker literally burns the DA's face so hard he turns evil. It's their world, and we're all just kind of living in it. When we look at Fincher's depiction of a charismatic leader, we see a lot of Jordan Belfort and Tyler Durden. Their true aesthetics run perpendicular to each other, but at its core, I think Fincher's making a very similar critique of Durden as to that of Scorsese's critique of Belfort. Durden's push for freedom leads to destruction, and Belfort's push for success leads to exploitation. Both of them are politically hollow. On a narrative level, this is the main character taking someone who would use their charisma to become some sort of smarmy businessman like Belfort, but instead co-opting it into someone who would destroy the system instead of abusing it. Both of these films are about the American dream gone awry, but they're driven in exact opposite directions. Fight Club depicting the cynical frustration built from the sterility of modern life, pushing us towards the freedom of a dark basement where we can hit each other in the face, and Wolf of Wall Street pushing Belfort towards gaming the system for his own personal gain. Jordan Belfort's speeches in this movie, especially that one where he decides that he's not going to step down as CEO, and he's like,
I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving!
they're not supposed to be reflective, they just exist to be engaging. Scorsese uses a dynamic Steadicam, circling Belfort as he delivers his speech, reinforcing his dominance in the frame. Belfort is almost always centered with the crowd. His position of power is visually reinforced by framing him as larger than life. The warm, golden hue in these sequences bathes Belfort in a kind of mythic glow. The financial world is not depicted with cold sterility, but with intoxicating vibrancy. The result is a sequence that mimics the rhetoric of real-world motivational speakers. Rather than critically distancing the audience, it immerses them in witnessing the experience of power. Okay, so how does Fight Club depict the leader of an actual cult? Tyler stands in the center, illuminated by the overhead light, commanding attention. The camera often frames him in these close-ups, but draws the audience into his words and expressions, further enhancing his, charisma. I think there's actually a really fun contrast between the political constructions of these films. Scorsese's Steadicam versus Fincher's verite handheld work. The gold that bathes Belfort gives them almost a mythical vibrancy, and Fight Club's almost nicotine-stained yellow has a decay and grime that creates a weirdly inviting warmth. These are two cults being pulled in opposite directions towards their leader's own version of success. Fight Club is the only pre 9/11 film in this project, and it exists as this really interesting time capsule of what exactly a terrorist was then. Ruth Quinney positions the narrator as a victim citizen, a male rendered powerless by economic and social forces. Fight Club is a film about a threat to national security growing from within. State authority is replaced by militarized fraternity where pain and scarring reclaim identity.
Without pain, without sacrifice, we would have nothing.
This is a group of people, men, yearning for palpable, violent change, and they really have no idea what's coming. I think this kind of brings us back to the core of this myth. Only certain people are meant to lead. In Fight Club, the narrator fails not because he's weak, but because he tries to become Tyler and loses himself. There needed to be the sort of separation between the two. These stories are punishing this everyman for reaching beyond his role. Whether it's the Batman copycats or Fight Club's basement recruits, the message is the same. You're not the chosen one. And even when the films seem critical, when Tyler becomes a terrorist or Belfort's a fraud, they're still framing these men as magnetic, larger-than-life figures. Through Gold or Grime-Stained Yellow, we're being told that real change can only come from someone else, someone who isn't us. Some people might not know about the second life this film has adopted on the internet. If you didn't, Fight Club has been co-opted in pretty radical ways. To many people on the internet, there's a strong sympathy directed towards Tyler Durden. He's joined the ranks of weird, literally me characters that Reddit worships. I think the concept of the literally me character is something very revealing about what attracts people to these characters. We should want to be Batman, but there's a very specific criteria we need to meet to be like Batman. But someone who is literally me is flawed, but in an identifiable way. We can still, aspire to emulate them. Jordan Belfort's a bad person, but he's a self-made bad person. As literally anyone would tell you, working sucks. But by starting his own company and preying on regular people, he's sticking it to the man. He didn't get set up for success like Bruce Wayne, and yeah, he had to step on a couple necks to get there, but that's the America we live in. That's why he's on TV now. He's a maverick. People who join a pyramid scheme do it because of this idea that they're going to be scamming others, not that they're the one scammed. The person upstream of them is just showing them the ropes. Belfort didn't say he was going to buy a Tesla because he just loves the look of the Cybertruck. He did it for the same reason Trump did Rogan, to win people over. But hey, if you're more of a Unabomber than American Psycho, boom, Tyler Durden. A lot of people feel lied to about success under late capitalism. People were raised being told that working hard brings success. Tyler says,
We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. And we're very, very pissed off.
This is a kind of true and especially American sentiment. We can't all be the main person, even if we view life as if we were. He's rejecting this materialistic corporate culture in favor of philosophy that values raw experiences over comfort. Experiences like getting punched in the face. But he's not actually freedom, he's just a different crowd to follow. He's still the guy, and you can never be an individual if you're still a follower of the guy. I broke my brain going through Reddit just searching the name Tyler Durden, and Jesus Christ, it is looking really bleak. I think it's just his politics were such a blank slate that people use him as a conduit for really any opinion they have already. Maeve Park, a researcher who specialized in the far right and the manosphere, told journalist Phil Tinline that incel groups see a sharp divide between alphas, like Tyler Durden, who effortlessly attract women, and betas, like the narrator, who have to make money in order to become attractive. To those guys, the narrator isn't just a stand-in for anyone in the audience, it's a stand-in for them. But Tyler is someone that takes action. Tyler is someone that can drive us towards salvation. Being an alpha is what it means to be a great man. Much like the real-life Jordan Belfort, Tyler Durden has been actualized into the real world. His philosophies and the sort of cult of masculinity he propagates have, in many ways, found their way into mainstream culture and even extremist movements. Andy Campbell reports in his 2022 book, We Are the Proud Boys, that when his subject, Gavin McInnes, started to recruit for his own militant arm of the Proud Boys, members specifically joined this because of the way it resembled Fight Club. And within their chats, there are references to Fight Club all over the place. They absolutely love the iconography. He said that Gavin takes this group of sort of listless men, and pelts them with all sorts of misogynistic rhetoric, all sorts of bigoted rhetoric that they are fighting for something bigger than themselves. When Anonymous announced their presence to the world, we saw the Guy Fawkes mask in a manifesto just directly appropriating Durden's ethos. It's sort of the whole backbone of a movement like Anonymous. Naomi Mendel identified Tyler spicing film as like hacking reality. She sees him as like a hacker of social systems. He's subverting infrastructure from within by using soap to make bombs, breaking systems, reclaiming control through mastery, and creatively misusing these tools. 4chan, which ironically just got hacked and taken down, is modeled through Fight Club. Rule 1 and 2 of one of the biggest forums is do not talk about /B. If your life is the internet like you live on 4chan, Anonymous is like what Banksy is to your parents. As Belfort has moved from criminal to financial guru, Tyler Durden's persona has evolved from a fictional figure into an emblem of radical groups and disaffected men. It's not just that his words are being repeated, it's that his image has become a symbol for those seeking something more tangible. His rhetoric has been co-opted to justify behavior that mirrors the very nihilism Fincher originally sought to critique. This isn't just a hypothetical problem, it's already affecting the world in real ways, from Proud Boys to incels to frauds like Jordan Belfort being able to come on TV as experts because cinema has allowed their narrative to become a compelling hero's journey. So should we stop telling these kinds of stories? Should movies only be compilations of politics that I agree with? Well, no. It's a losing battle to expect everyone to interact with art the right way. Batman's kind of telling us we can't be Batman. Fight Club and The Wolf of Wall Street are telling us, don't be like these people. These directors are all grappling with what it means to be a hero, and yet the very construction of these films will always lead to people almost worshipping and emulating these characters. Maybe film doesn't change the world directly, but it can shape the way we see it. These films are not just entertainment, but machines of cultural narrative production. Through carefully constructed visual language, they do more than just tell stories. They actively manufacture consent for dangerous mythologies of heroism, power, and individual agency. Maybe the frustration we feel, this sense of wanting to do something but being unable to change anything, is not a failure of cinema, but a reflection of the larger structures that condition our passivity. And maybe recognizing that tension is the first step towards understanding how narratives shape our perception of power and how we might break free from them.